Over the past month, I've been researching how to find a monster dating website. It's exactly what it sounds like. If you're one of the lucky few to use the site, you can go on a date with any kind of monster straight from a nightmare with mixed results. I've heard rumors that it's turned out well for some people, but not so much for others. I was determined to find this website. Here I thought hooking up with a werewolf or vampire was just a crazy dream. Now I had a chance. I have no proof of this, but I think the site picks who gets to use its services. People can stumble on it to look, but only the special ones can sign up for the dating part of the website. No one has been able to get a screenshot. Posts have said the website looks old, like from the early 2000s. It had a section on the front page with profiles of creatures to date. They get booked up so quickly that it's better to fill out the blind dating profile. Since the website is only up for a few minutes after midnight, I didn't want to risk getting kicked off while trying to find the perfect monster to date. I wasn't picky, any creature would do. It took me weeks of clicking around on forums and dead links to finally find it. My heart was racing when a random friend request showed up through Discord a few minutes before midnight. The username was a string of numbers and letters. The only message was a link. It's not a good idea to click random links, however I was willing to nuke my computer for this chance. I waited until the clock rolled over and quickly opened the website. My hand shook from excitement as I flew to the dating profile page, ignoring the home page. I wish I could be faster to sign up for a date or two with some of the displayed monsters. The low-res images showing cute girls with cat ears disappeared within a few seconds as they were instantly booked up. Another theory that has been put out there is the idea of this website catering to parallel universes. It would explain where all these monsters came from and how so many were booked for dates without it becoming mainstream news. The blind dating profile was simple. It asked for your name, phone number, email address, and ideal date. There was also a drop-down menu hidden near the bottom of the page, asking for your preferred species. There were no promises you would get what you asked for, but if a creature you wanted was free, then that's who they would send first. I filled out my name and phone number, then went straight to the drop-down menu. I only had a minute before the site went down. I did want to pick werewolf from the menu, but it was in alphabetical order, and there were a lot of options. If I tried scrolling that far down, I would use up all my time. Most of these creatures' names I didn't recognize. A word caught my eye: hybrid. Would werewolves count as a hybrid monster? They were a human and a wolf mixed, so maybe. I clicked that and submitted my request moments before I got kicked off the site. I held my breath waiting and praying. People reported getting a text shortly after applying. Some got one even if they hadn't put in their cell phone number, and yet they got the message about a date. It felt like time was moving in slow motion when finally a text from an unknown number came through. It had a photo of a stop sign at the end of the street I lived on, saying my date would meet me there at 11 p.m. on Friday. The Discord message disappeared and there was no history of the dating website on my browser. I knew this was legit. I grabbed my phone and replied to the text, asking if the date could happen sooner. I think no one had ever sent such a message back to the mysterious number. I could almost feel the confusion through the phone. A few minutes passed and another set of texts came through. "Does 11 p.m. on Wednesday work for you?" they asked. I wanted to press my luck and ask for anything sooner, but I accepted that time. The messages disappeared from my phone, leaving no traces behind of what I agreed to. I was immensely excited. How couldn't I be? I've heard horror stories about people getting ripped apart by their so-called dates, or get stuck in a relationship where they always needed to watch their backs. I knew the risks going in, and I was fine accepting death if that also meant I may be able to experience a goal I thought would be impossible. I arrived early and started pacing on the spot, waiting for my date to show up. I realized there hadn't been a choice to pick the gender of who you would be meeting, but with creatures, gender was tricky. I mean, what if your date was a blob monster? Do blobs even have genders? Do vampires even care if you call them a guy or a girl? Honestly, I was fine with whatever. Being picky with gender feels silly when you're down to be with a creature made up of dark fur and teeth. The person who arrived appeared somewhat normal aside from the large brown trench coat in the summer heat. He was taller than me by 2 feet, but his face looked a few years younger than I was. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked after he stopped near the stop sign. We were a little bit away from a street light. Shadows played over his face, giving away a hint of the monster he really was behind his human face. "I think I'm waiting for you. I'm Clay," I said as I held out my hand for him to shake. It took him a second to figure out a handshake, which was a little cute. He had long wavy dark hair that almost looked purple in the dim light. "I'm called Saran," he said and smiled, showing off unnaturally pointed teeth. My heart fluttered in a mixture of fear and excitement. It was the same feeling as waiting in line for a roller coaster. The bottom of the trench coat moved in an odd way that drew my eyes downwards. I had picked hybrid, but I couldn't see his feet. Was his bottom half human or something else? Would it be rude to ask what was under the coat? I felt my face flush when I realized I might be expecting a bit too much out of a first date. "My place is just down the street. Do you want to come over?" I asked, feeling suddenly flustered. "How bold of you to invite me over. Someone would think you may have certain motives in mind," Saran teased. I found myself at a loss for words. Yes, that was the goal of this date, but when the option was directly in front of me, I found myself fumbling. "We can just hang out. We don't need to rush into anything," I weakly defended myself. He smiled again, but this time his expression lost any charm his face held. The monster he was came out as he started to open his coat. A sound started from under the fabric. It was one I couldn't place, but it made my skin crawl. Suddenly, this date didn't seem as fun as I expected it was going to be. "I don't mind rushing into things. In fact, I like you so much I don't want to even wait to get inside." A flash of motion came from under his coat, and I felt a pressure wrap around my body. My arms were pinned tightly, and I was barely able to breathe. My heart dropped in horror as countless legs moved around me, making more of that terrible sound that made the inside of my skull itch. Saran's bottom half wasn't anything remotely close to human. Somehow, he had tucked away an insanely long black centipede body under his coat. At that moment, I didn't care about how he accomplished such a feat. My brain was too fried from fear of the situation I found myself in. I thought I would have been fine with death. I expected that outcome, but I never would have thought creatures like him were out there. His smile grew when he saw my fearful expression and felt my body shake under his. His legs didn't stop moving as his body kept wrapped around mine, the tips of his legs quickly moving against my exposed arms. I jolted under the weight when a set of legs lifted my shirt for a second. "I won't be able to hold back devouring a cute little thing like yourself. It won't hurt too much though," he whispered, his face getting closer to my own. I shook my head, my throat closing up, causing only a whimper to come out. This wasn't what I wanted at all. His teeth were about to come down to rip away my ear when I finally was able to yell. "Get your gross creepy legs off me," I shouted and shut my eyes tight. The movement stopped. Dogs in the distance started to bark, and I thankfully didn't have to listen to the sounds of his legs constantly crawling. Carefully, I opened my eyes to take a peek in his direction. I thought he would have been angry or even amused by my outburst. Instead, he looked like someone had slapped him across the face. The grip lessened and he drew his body away, hiding it under his coat again. Guilt started in my stomach. A neighbor came outside to quiet his dog. I didn't want someone to see us, so I took him by the wrist to drag him down the street to my place. Sure, it wasn't the best idea to let him know where I lived. The air of danger around him disappeared as he slumped against my couch, face buried into the cushions, and he let his long body sprawl out over the floor. "Do you want to pick up where we left off?" I offered nervously. Saran shook his head, still pressed into the cushion. "I'm not in the mood," he admitted. I sat down next to him, feeling like a jerk. Sure, he was going to eat me. That doesn't mean I should have insulted him. I did sign up for this date knowing the possible outcomes, and yet I acted like this. "Do you find my body disgusting?" he asked suddenly in a moody voice after he lifted his head. "What? No," I partly lied. His top half was super cute. His pointed legs scuttled, causing my shoulders to tense up, revealing my lie. "I was just surprised, that's all." I tried defending myself, hands raised. Saren frowned, disappointed over how the night was going. His body curled itself inwards, showing just how emotional he was under the surface. It's always like this. Everyone is fine being frisky with a monster until I show up. People pick a hybrid hoping for a dog man or a human with animal features. I've worked so hard to become a terrifying monster only to have your kind be disgusted by my body. I really felt bad. This poor guy had issues and I wasn't helping at all. I wasn't sure what to say to make the situation better. Werewolves and dogmen are popular in media, so a lot of people think they're hot. Maybe we just need more exposure to your kind of creature, I suggested. His cheeks puffed up for a second and his legs twitched in agitation. His face turned a slight shade of red as he refused to look at me. If you think dogs are hot, just get one and don't sign up for a monster dating website, he huffed. I didn't hide my disgust at the suggestion. There's a difference, okay, I said, shaking my head. How so? I think a human sleeping with a werewolf is crossing a line. At least I have the upper half of a human and the same kind of... Saren stopped himself before he said something a bit too crude. His face turned an even deeper shade of red, and he pressed his face back into the cushions, mortified over what he was about to talk about. He had a large baggy sweater on under his trench coat, so I wasn't able to see what it looked like when his human half met his insect half. I knew I should have dropped it, but I couldn't help myself. How many dates before I get to see what you're working with? I joked, trying to lighten the mood. He let out a muffled scream, his head shooting up and eyes filled with embarrassed tears. I never should have agreed to this. Your kind is horrible, only good for food. I can't believe I put in so much effort to get my body looking like this, he hissed out. Okay, I was still acting like a huge jerk. I let him cool down for a minute. I'm fairly sure I traumatized him a little, even though he was the monster in the room. I'm sorry I embarrassed you, I started and saw him pout and turn his head. I went into this date with some pretty crude expectations. I wanted to meet a monster that would get too excited during a passionate meeting and eat me, ideally after the passion part, I explained. Saren's cheeks were still pink, but he was curious about my reasoning. I think most people would judge me for my ideal way to die. Even a monster sitting next to me seemed confused. You want to get eaten in the middle of... He found it too embarrassing to finish the question out loud. Why? The words spilled out and he instantly regretted asking. I smiled at him, fully understanding his confusion. I felt bad he got stuck with me that night. I have a disease that will cause my body to lose functions over time. I've seen my relatives die from it, and I don't want to end up like them. I wanted to go out on my own terms, but I also wanted my body to be used for something. I heard horror stories about people donating their bodies to science, then getting blown up in experiments. I explained and gave him a little bit to let the information sink in. I don't understand how you decided on mating with a werewolf and letting it eat you, Saren said with a raised eyebrow. Not just a werewolf. I would be happy with any other sexy monster, I corrected and then mentally kicked myself. Saren curled his body in tighter, taking my words as an insult. I had rejected him earlier, and now I admitted I didn't find him attractive. Well, his top half was easy on the eyes. His bottom half was mentally harder to get used to. He let out a sigh, accepting that this date was a disaster. I suppose we're both stuck with a body that causes us problems. At least I was able to do something about mine. When I was born, I was a simple millipede. As I ate more human flesh, I gained this appearance. After all that hard work, I'm still stuck with a form people turn away from. Again, a guilty feeling came to my stomach. You know, it was just the sounds that were gross. I was honestly scared when you were wrapped around me. I think you're very talented at being a dark and scary monster people would have nightmares about. Saren looked a bit embarrassed over getting some unexpected praise. He wasn't fully agreeing with the statements, but he didn't ask me to stop. I looked back at his many legs, now correcting myself that he was a millipede and not a centipede. I suppose millipedes could be cute in the right light. I carefully placed a hand on one of the segments, feeling how smooth and warm it was. His back stiffened, but he didn't protest. I wanted to salvage this night for him, or at the very least make Saren feel better about himself. How about you try scaring me again? I offered. He shook his head, being stubborn. I decided to use a different tactic. We are on a date. We could do date-related things, I suggested. You're just desperate to live out your weird fetish and get in my pants. Why don't you track down a stupid dog man for that? He huffed. I only kiss on the first date. I don't put out, I'm not that easy, I corrected, offended. Those words made him perk up. I felt a small tremble go down his body as his legs clicked away at the carpet. You think my legs are gross? He muttered mostly to himself. I think he wanted affection from someone as much as he wanted a free meal. I could at least give him one of those things. We should try exposure therapy. After a while, I won't feel grossed out by the noises. I'll just be scared of you. I was freaked out earlier, so it's not as if you're not scary. Saren made some noises as if he was facing a hard choice. It took a lot of fidgeting until he felt comfortable to bring his face closer to mine. He pointed to his cheek and permitted me to kiss it. A noise came from him that sounded like it was from a high school girl. A ripple went down his body as his legs tapped away. The sound gave me goosebumps and raised all the hair on my arms. But weirdly, the reaction had also been a little bit cute. He permitted a few more cheek kisses with the same kind of reaction. Just as I thought I was getting past the whole leg thing, his body suddenly wrapped around mine. Each leg tip dug into my skin. The weight compressed my lungs for a second. His millipede body started to move around, expanding and tightening to let me breathe enough so I wouldn't pass out. I'm sure there was someone out there who would have enjoyed this, but I didn't. I was scared as hell. Saren took hold of my face, his starving monster side showing itself. He wasn't able to hold back from nipping and biting soft parts of my face and neck. Again, I bet someone out there would have loved this, but my heart raced in fear that his teeth just needed to bite down slightly harder to end my life. My mind raced, wanting this to end, but I kept my mouth shut. No matter how scared I was, I refused to upset a poor monster I called over for a date. I brought all this onto myself and I needed to face it. It felt like years I had been wrapped in that terrifying hold. It was only an hour. Saren misjudged his strength and wrapped it around too tightly for too long. Stars danced in the dark and I passed out for a few minutes. I woke up on the floor to him gently tapping my face to see if I was still alive. My body was bruised and my lips were sore from his teeth. I stayed on the ground and asked him to come closer, which he did. When he was within striking distance, I kissed his cheek, which mortified him enough to be revenge for the still lingering feeling of his legs crawling over me. When I was able to sit up again, Saren gathered his coat, saying it was about time for him to leave. He patiently helped me get up and see him to the door. We awkwardly stood as he tucked his long body away, ready to disappear back into the night. If you find the website again and request a date a week before the full moon, you have a better chance of getting a werewolf, he told me as he lingered near the door. I think I changed my mind about how I want to go out, I admitted. He frowned, most likely regretting ever trying to speak with a human, let alone go on a date with one. I think I would rather get eaten by a super cute monster after we've had a few dates, and I've gotten to know them better, I said, nodding. Saren shrugged, thinking back to the website and what creatures he knew that could fit that description. I mean, you could try putting that in your profile, but I think all the creatures humans think are cute get booked up too fast, he said, shaking his head. Does that mean you're not free this Friday? His entire body froze as my words sank in. His mouth opened and closed a few times like a fish trying to think of a response. I laughed at his reaction, which was not something he wanted to hear. I'm supposed to be terrifying, a man-eating beast, something that you don't want to encounter at night. I should have humans frozen in fear at the sight of me and you, he hissed, frustrated, which made me laugh more. You can be all those things and cute, I assured him. He froze again, eyes narrowed, trying to spot a lie. You're super scary, I said again. If you're lying to me, I'll make you regret it, Saren replied, voice low and dark. See, that's scary, I pointed out. He straightened up, folded his arms, appearing proud of himself. And now you're cute. His reaction was to give my shoulder a hard shove. I heard something crack as a bolt of pain shot directly into my brain. He didn't break anything, but he could have. I rubbed my sore arm, fighting back a pained reaction so he didn't know how much damage he did. Friday, I asked, trying to confirm another date regardless of what just happened. I might just eat you before you get any action, Saren said, still sounding a little upset with me. I'm fine with that. We won't do anything you're not comfortable with. He shook his head and tightened his coat around his neck, then hid half his face inside. Then he spoke some words I never thought I would hear from another person, let alone a monster that wanted to eat me. You should value your life more. That time I was the one stunned into silence. For so long, I assumed my life was meaningless because I wouldn't last long. I only had a few years at most, so who cares about anything I've ever done? I was never someone important, or at least I've always treated myself in that way. My hand shot out to take his. We both were surprised at my reaction. I want to be scared. I'm scared of death, but not enough to stay away from it, I think. If we spend more time together, I'll value the time I have left. I know it's asking a lot of you, but can you scare me? My chest hurt. I couldn't believe I asked such a huge thing from someone I just met. Saren was a stranger. He had no obligation to stay with me, and yet he started to slowly nod his head. He was determined to make me afraid. He didn't care if I was scared that he was a monster or scared that I wouldn't be with him forever. I need to go before I rip something off of you, Saren said, his face still hidden under his coat. I let him leave with a promise we would see each other soon. Without any doubt, Saren was going to be the one to end my life. I had long accepted I wouldn't grow old, but it had been a while since I was scared of death. Yes, I was scared, finally scared of dying, but now I was also a bit excited to see what I would experience along the way. Depending on what that was, I may need to keep certain things private for Saren's sake. I would recommend looking for the dating website for yourself, as long as you're aware of the risks that come with a cute, yet scary monster partner.